What is going on, YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the debut album by Kid Cudi. Basically, this album is called Man on the Moon, The End of Day, and it came out in the late summer of 2009. Now, after Kid Cudi's hit mixtape, A Kid Named Cudi, from early 2008, he worked on this particular album. And it was a pretty large one. It did a lot of damage around that time. I don't wholesomely remember this project, but I do at least remember a few of the singles, or, well, all three of the singles in some variation. I do remember kind of hearing them out and about throughout and that sort of stuff. But it's just kind of one, me looking after it, just the concept. This was basically like a 2010s version of the stuff that Kanye West was doing back in 2003, 2004, 2005. But it just kind of has like a real kind of Bob Marley-esque drugginess about it, head shop quality, places like head shop kind of quality type fare, but it combines that with like some backpacker kind of introspection that just kind of blurs the lines between back and forth of that real well, where it's halfway slacker, but also halfway kind of just elemental and just like having like a blue collar and more kind of kempt kind of atmosphere about it. It's just kind of the concept of getting that. But I do like the concept of some of these songs on here just because it's interesting. I did enjoy like A Kid Named Cudi, like when I reviewed that back in February. But I kind of feel like the album translation, seeing as to how easily Kid Cudi took the album format, is pretty interesting. Just because some of these where I feel like the Kid Named Cudi, or I feel like the Kid Named Cudi mixtape had a lot more localized kind of records like Heaven at Night and Day and Night and like TGIF and some of those ones, amongst some other ones that were kind of on there. That one was just a lot more localized and more residential. I feel like a lot of the stuff on here kind of has like a lot more kind of just upgraded kind of fashion as far as the concepts of things that would be marketed out to markets and that sort of stuff as far as that kind of went. It's just interesting, like me questioning like the concept of getting like a song like Pursuit of Happiness or Make Her Say on like the Kid Named Cudi album. It's not to say this album is bad and it's going to get a pretty high score, but I look after it, just the concept. I do like, for me to talk about A Kid Named Cudi, I did like some of the localized and more residential kind of bar hopping kind of bops on that particular album. But I do feel like this does kind of have like a drug addled mixture of something between like Bob Marley, Kanye West, and like Jimi Hendrix and some of those type people. This really kind of has that. But this is definitely something that you could catch at like a head shop, places like that, where you'd see incense being sold in some of those type moments as far as that kind of goes. So it's just kind of the concept that it does have like a catch of like, Kanye West kind of more introspection as far as that kind of goes. So it just blurs the lines between that pretty well. Now, I was almost thinking, originally I was going to think that this was going to be like a makeshift kind of album, just seeing what was going to happen. Like, I knew that Day and Night was on here, but some of these singles and just the formats, I was kind of almost thinking initially that this was going to be like a more kind of like 2010s version of like Late Registration or something like that. But it does kind of have like, I mean, it blurs the lines between backpacker and kind of more like psychedelic recreational type stuff. I look after it. There's not as many makeshift songs on here as like I thought there were going to be. I thought there was going to be like a good 5 or 6 songs like Pursuit of Happiness and a lesser degree Make Her Say, but I kind of feel like it didn't. You know, it's this kind of thing. This was really kind of like a warped kind of, I mean, it keeps like the spacey theme. This one's not quite as spacey as like A Kid Named Cudi from 2008, but it does have like approximate kind of values of that. And it's just kind of the concept that this is very much like kind of just a full versatile kind of album there. So I'll go ahead and talk about the singles. There were 3 singles on this album, and they all happened to last for a decent while, just between like, really the promotion of this album started in 2008 with Day and Night, but that was just carried, like Kid Cudi was making a lot of noise throughout 2009, and Make Her Say was a pretty good hit single. And then Pursuit of Happiness carried the album a little bit further, but it's actually kind of surprising that there was only 3 singles. I thought there would have been a little bit more push for this project, but it did work pretty well. So Day and Night, the first single, which was also on A Kid Named Cudi, you can get that song on the mixtape. This is kind of a more album fleshed out version of it, but it's very much like a spacey, smoky haze of a club bop. I would say it's very melodic and executed well, and it's just radio ready. Radio ready. I would have to say that this continues to be one of Kid Cudi's most popular songs. It's not to say he doesn't have other ones, but this is just one that just was knocked out of the park just immediately, and this continues. It's like Eminem's kind of like My Name Is or something like that. It's just one of those initial songs that you hear by him that's just like an instant kind of appeal, one that just kind of has that affability. It's just a real nice one, just great single. Despite the fact that the other two singles didn't chart as heavily, I do recommend those also. But I kind of feel like this looming kind of this gleaming kind of beat on here is just so catchy and affable. This really works well. But I would still recommend these other two singles if you start off with like Day and Night or something like that and you don't wholesomely know some of these. But that it is a very nice one. Make Her Say is the second single, and this kind of samples Lady Gaga's Poker Face a little bit. It's an interesting bop as far as that kind of goes. I definitely saw this single as like very much saw this song as like morning glaze and coffee shop like. I definitely feel like this is a song of like some gauzy brunch commute, I would say. And it's also, but it can also kind of be like some late night drear. I feel like if you're just hopping, bar hopping, that type of stuff, and you're just kind of dreared out a little bit. Just have some drinks in your system. And you're just kind of listening to the people who sing awfully when you hear them, that type of stuff. Just karaoke nights and just glaze kind of city life as far as that kind of goes. I feel like this is definitely some New York. This is definitely some New York and big city bound kind of glaze as far as that kind of goes. I can see this being some late night malaise, but it's also I very much see this song, just the catchiness of this the sample as to how this song kind of works. Very much feels like a Kanye West kind of song that he would do back from like the 2000s, but it's very I do see this concept of being like morning glaze and kind of brunch commute as far as that kind of goes. It's really kind of nice makeshift kind of bop. Definitely one for this. Definitely kind of see this for early morning commute and brunch commute, that type of stuff as far as that kind of goes. Just some easy kind of makeshift bops. Then the third single is Pursuit of Happiness, and this is a drowsy, kind of sluggish drear about recreational use and that type of stuff. Definitely some decent makeshift, but it has a message. So this is one about drug use, just kind of abusiveness of that sort of concept. This is the sort of stuff. There were some songs that kind of had a lot more kind of this like sobering kind of atmosphere about it. Like this is very much a song that you could listen to when you're pretty slurred out in that type concept, but it's not really as much of an indulgent kind of song as far as that kind of goes. It's not really one where you should the feel of the song kind of makes it where you should not be that indulgent and kind of like that proud of being indulgent as far as that kind of goes. This is just kind of like a makeshift one, kind of seeing the error of your ways and just kind of being amongst the concept of saying maybe this isn't always like the best idea as far as that kind of goes. This kind of one, I mean, I like the concept of getting this one just because it can very much be a song that just kind of embellish in some of those moments and kind of have some drinks and that type of stuff and some smoke sessions. But I kind of look after it. It's kind of one that does, like Kid Cudi made the song with the concept of saying that it's just kind of about the woes of like the concepts of this over abusiveness of that and that sort of concept. So that's kind of the thing about it as far as that kind of goes. So it is some makeshift. It's definitely one that you can listen to just in like evening malaise and kind of just makeshift hours of like 4:30, 5:30 p.m. just getting off work, that type of stuff. But it has a message. It's kind of one of those ones. It fit right in with late 2009, early 2010. It seemed like there were more songs like this. I can't name them offhandedly, but maybe when thinking of like rock records, alternative metal, post grunge, especially that kind of had that wailing, some of those wailings as far as like the makeshift kind of singles that kind of happen with that. It's just good to kind of get that from a rap angle because rappers weren't necessarily doing that as much in like the early 2000s and those type moments as far as that kind of went. It's just kind of a new kind of valve for Kid Cudi to capitalize on that, kind of make like some makeshift kind of drear for that sort of concept. It's good. So to talk about the songs I recommend on here, there's 8 songs out of 18 I recommend, plus 5 almost songs. And the reason why a couple of those are almost songs is just because you can find them on Kid Cudi's 2008 mixtape. I'm going to count Day and Night just because that was like the lead single, and that's actually a single off this album. The other ones you can just pretty much get on the mixtape. So I think the thing about the deluxe edition is there's not really too much point to getting the deluxe edition just because you can download the mixtape for free and get those songs. But I do feel like, so we'll go ahead and recommend these 8 songs. So the 8 songs I recommend would be Day and Night, Make Her Say, Solo Dolo, Higher, Up Up and Away, Alive, My World, and Cudi Zone. The 5 almost songs would be Man on the Moon, Soundtrack to My Life, Sky Might Fall, TGIF, and Pursuit of Happiness. So Man on the Moon is a song I don't know if I recommended back in February when I reviewed Kid Cudi's mixtape, but this is a bravado song and it has a very emphatic feel about it. It's a good smoke a few gem, I would say. It has some feel-good pep and it pulls that off well. I just look at the concept about talking about this particular song. It's just that it has a good capital kind of emphasis about it that really has like some good bravado and accomplishment feel about it. This kind of feels like a victorious kind of song to listen to. Definitely like the emphasis of that one. The only reason why it's an almost song is because you can find it on the mixtape. TGIF is another one that you can find on the mixtape. It's a murky, kind of spacey outing gem, and some snazzy social pizzazz about it, and it has a good amount of gleams. I definitely feel like the concept about this one is pretty good. This is probably one of the mixtape's best hits. This is definitely one that just kind of felt localized and a lot more just kind of bopish as far as being out on the town and that sort of concept. There's another song that's kind of like that on here called Alive that's similar to that one. Definitely like that. I definitely like the concept that Alive and TGIF kind of had that kind of addled kind of similarity. But the thing about TGIF is that one's more out on the town, or I feel like Alive is kind of more of like a house party cut, but they're both pretty good. They're just, this one's particularly murky. It's just one of the better ones, I would say, at least for the mixtape. But yeah, there's definitely some gems on this album. So I'm going to talk about a particular good smoking song. If you do need some smoking songs on here, Kid Cudi has you covered. I definitely feel like Higher is just a really soulful kind of song. This is a very soulful, excellent smoke of you song. It's floaty and cloudy, and it just feels like a slumped kind of comfy haze. I would definitely say this is just a really kind of powerful, emphasized kind of one. It has Chip the Ripper on there. I think that's King Chip, so that's a pretty good cat. He's a collaborator with Kid Cudi. It's a good concept about that one. There are some kind of relapse from Eminem kind of ruminating songs. I definitely feel like there's some murky songs on here. A particular one that kind of does that is My World. I definitely feel like My World is kind of like a leery personal bop. I definitely feel like My World is like a leery personal bop with some bite. It's kind of a glaring haunt of like inward malaise, I would say, and it's just a nice personal cut. There's a couple of these on here. I kind of was itching for like some more Kid Cudi personal bops that were kind of like My World and Solo Dolo, because these are really just like some leery kind of ones that just work extremely well. Like this is kind of him honing and harnessing Eminem and pulling it off pretty well. I was almost kind of hoping that Sky Might Fall would be like that, but that one's not like that one. But My World and Solo Dolo are two good ones. Definitely like the sample on Solo Dolo. This is kind of a glaring Eminem like ruminating cut. This is like dark and brooding. It's a dark and brooding kind of personal song with some catchiness about it. So I do like this concept of Kid Cudi getting some of this type stuff. So if you like Relapse by Eminem, these are two good ones for that sort of concept of just that same kind of dark murkiness that just works off extremely well. I definitely like the concept of those. Up and Away is a sparkly city out and about bop. I would say it's busy sounding and it has good bustle about it, and it's very catchy. This is kind of one. There's another one that like this on here. I think it's like Soundtrack to My Life that kind of does that too. Soundtrack to My Life is another song that has the same type feel as Up and Away, where Soundtrack to My Life is kind of a good one. This is an almost song for me, though. This is kind of a blurry, quick living, ruminating song. It's personal and busy about it, but it has some dreary pep. So this is kind of one that could have been a single. It's definitely one of the most popular songs off this album on Spotify. It has over 200 million hits. That's pretty good. I guess a lot of people did like this song, but it just reminds me of something kind of, if you like Pursuit of Happiness, just without the drug addledness about it. This is kind of one that's kind of makeshift. This kind of like a ruminating song, but the concept as to why it's an almost song to me is just because I look at the question of where to listen to it. Just because the reason why Soundtrack to My Life is kind of an almost, because it's kind of an awkward song to listen to if you're not living quickly and having a more busy lifestyle as far as that kind of goes. It definitely has some pep, but it's not drug addled as much. It's not really like a recreational kind of, I mean, it's kind of blurry and dreary. It's probably like a good drink a couple beers kind of song in that sort of context, but it's just kind of more city life and just kind of out and about, those kind of Tupac early 90s type bops as far as that kind of goes. Mac Miller type bop also as far as that kind of goes. But I look after it, it's just kind of, yeah, it's just not quite as catchy if you're not living busily. And Sky Might Fall, cloudy, starry-eyed pep of a song. It's more imperative and has slight paranoia about it, but it's some decent makeshift rap. This is the sort of stuff that like B.O.B. kind of does, and Mac Miller, Wiz Khalifa, some of those type folks. This is definitely the shape-shifting kind of sound of a song that was starting to usher in like the early 2010s as far as that kind of went. Or just this one kind of feels more backpacker rap and just more starry-eyed about it. And that's pretty much the reason why I feel like it's an almost song. It's just because the peppiness of it is not quite as catchy. I mean, there are some peppy songs on here that I do appreciate, but this one was just kind of, or it's kind of paranoia about it. But I just look after it, the concept of this song being like the sky might fall, but then kind of having some pep about it. I feel like this song would have worked out better if it had been darker, like My World and Solo Dolo. But this one just kind of, the concept of the song's lyrics and the concept of the song just didn't seem to match with like the emphasis of how the mood of the song kind of went. So it was just kind of odd about it. I mean, I think it was trying to convey that, like, you know, just the pep of just being more affable about it, but it was just kind of odd pairing for it. So, Cudi Zone is kind of a jazzy club bop, and this one's upbeat and gleaming. It's a good dance cut, and it has like an elastic feel. So I feel like this is one that reminds me of something that, like, I forget the name of the group, like, This is one that reminds me of like Daft Punk and that type stuff. This more kind of spacey electronic type stuff, the sort of stuff that like The Weeknd and Daft Punk and some of those folks kind of do, in just like a more kind of spaced out kind of sense. Definitely a good nightclub bop. There's not too many nightclub songs on here. I feel like Kid Cudi had a lot more songs just being out on the town, kind of a combination of like house party vibes and kind of more city kind of busyness and just kind of makeshift car kind of busyness. But this is one where you're actually in a nightclub or something like that and having like a good shake your ass kind of time. I definitely like the concept where, apart from like Day and Night and maybe Make Her Say, I kind of feel like there weren't a ton of really like social night out kind of nightclub kind of bops. I do like the concept of getting that one. But to talk about like a house party bop, like I was saying, like how some of those kind of were, like Alive is kind of a good one. TGIF's kind of like a stepping out version of that, but Alive is kind of like a groggy, murky house party gem. It's some late night sleaze, I would say, and it's just a festive kind of woozy social fare. This is just one that really feels like you're torn out of your mind a little bit. Just the concept of that one is definitely one to get tilted to. Just a good one to get torn up to. And that's the concept about this album. There's just a good amalgamation of things on this particular project where it just tries a bunch of angles, but it does. I feel like Kid Cudi kind of having some of that backpacker tinge about it, where it's kind of Kanye West oriented, but then it's kind of not. I look after this. This is just very much head shop kind of material, just in a sense of having like a blue collar job and being more straightforward. This is not really hustlers music and drug dealer music as far as that kind of goes, just kind of gangsta rap type stuff. I look after it. It does have a pretty good big city sense of nightlife and just appeal as far as that kind of goes. I feel like you've got like some smoking tunes like Higher and Alive and some of those type moments. And then you've got like some club bops on here like Day and Night, Make Her Say, and Cudi Zone. And you've got like some makeshift songs on here like Soundtrack to My Life, Sky Might Fall, In Pursuit of Happiness. And you've got some Eminem relapse era ruminating songs like Solo Dolo and My World. So there's just a good packaging of how this album kind of turned out. Definitely has like a pretty busy sense. I think that's something about Kid Cudi on this particular project. Doesn't necessarily have like the hustlers kind of mentality and kind of more drug dealing, money grubby kind of atmosphere, but it does have a sense of busyness and just kind of more alert kind of this sense of liveliness that kind of goes along with it. I just think that there's kind of a busybody kind of appeal, just being out and about and kind of gingerbread man-esque type atmosphere as far as that kind of goes. But I just look after it. Like the concept of this album, to talk about some of the songs I didn't enjoy on here, like to talk about some of the songs I didn't enjoy as much on here, like In My Dreams was kind of like an intro of a song that was kind of more clouded and introspective that just didn't quite have the vibes as well as like songs like Higher did. I felt like that one, I feel like In My Dreams probably could have been better intro as far as that kind of went. And Simple As, I just didn't like the sample on that song. It was not quite as catchy. It was just kind of an odd duck of one. Heart of a Lion was another. Heart of a Lion was just kind of one that was just kind of more peppy and upbeat that I just didn't see myself connecting with as much or listening to that much. I just didn't really appreciate the energy of that one. Intergalactic Love was kind of being like, Intergalactic was kind of a ladies song that just didn't quite work out as well. That one was trying to be like some Daft Punk type stuff. I just didn't like the approach of how that one kind of went. I would have preferred a more kind of regular sounding ladies song, more like something like Make Her Say or something like that. That would have been more approachable. But this was kind of a spacey one that I just didn't have as much affability towards. And then like Is There Any Love was just kind of like a boom bap kind of beat that I just didn't appreciate that much. Didn't really enjoy that one. So it's kind of the concept about some of those. I want to say that there was at least one other song. Yeah, I think actually that kind of takes care of it. So to talk about me recommending 8 songs out of 18 plus 5 almost songs, that's actually like the concept of liking 13 out of 18 is quite a bit. But I kind of feel like the concept about some of these, I can give Kid Cudi the score uppage a little bit just because Man on the Moon and TGIF were kind of already on. Me liking 13 songs out of 18, but the reality of it is, minus the almost songs, it's 8 out of 13. But I'll give Kid Cudi 2 songs credit towards the score just because the 2 songs that were on the mixtape are good. And I'm not on the fence about those songs, but they're just almost songs because they're already on another project. But so basically 10 out of 18 plus 3 almost songs. I would kind of say I'm going to give this album like a 7.5 out of 10. I feel like that's pretty good. Like 10 out of 18 is set middle of the road kind of territory. But I look after just the 3 almost songs, it's about 75%, a little bit underneath 8 out of 10. I just feel like it's kind of just missed that by like a hair or two. 7.5 out of 10. The social score of this album gets a 9 out of 10 because this is a pretty busy sounding and affable project from Kid Cudi. I definitely think this is an exceptional project with the sense of nightlife that it has, just between the makeshift songs, the kind of bar hopping songs, the house party songs, the smoking songs, the club songs, some of those type moments. It definitely has a pretty good sense of that. And really, the only minor complaint I would have, just as the reason why this got like a 7.5 and the social score got a 9 out of 10, is just the fact that some of these almost songs, I definitely would have thought that if it would have been 13 out of 18, that probably would have been like 8.25, 8.5 out of 10 territory. But I just feel like some of these, trying to look after some of these songs that were makeshift and kind of almost songs like Pursuit of Happiness, Sky Might Fall, and Soundtrack to My Life, is there are good songs. I like the concept of these, but the busyness factor of them is just if you don't have matching energy for how some of these songs kind of work, they just don't have the same affability and connectability as far as that kind of goes. That's the concept about it as far as getting those. But I feel like, yeah, me at least liking 10 songs out of 18, that's a little bit more than half the albums. That's this kind of thing. I mean, 9 out of 18 is exactly half. So, but then to say just on the standard edition, but then, yeah, it's just up in the air. I would have to say it's just a little bit better than middle of the road, but there are at least approximately 13 out of 18 songs I recommend. So that's kind of the thing. In terms of the future, I would have to say Kid Cudi is working on an album. I think it's called like Intergalactic or something like that. It's supposed to be coming out in 2024. It was supposed to come out this month, but it kind of got delayed. So I look after the concept. There is some more stuff coming. I am going to have to see about some more Kid Cudi. I do want to review like his 2010 album, some other ones. We'll get to some more of these, but that's kind of the concept. This is pretty solid here. This is definitely pretty compacted and impactful debut that had a lot of gems on here.